Jennifer Madden. Since the events of 9/11, many of us have been hearing a lot about immigration law, but are often confused about what is required to remain here in the United States and how the laws have changed since that time in 2001. And joining me now to talk more about this is Michael Wild. He is a U.S. immigration lawyer as well as a councilman in Englewood and a former federal prosecutor. So you've worn many hats on both sides of the law. Thanks for joining us today on Take 10.
My pleasure.
Or to say, now you've been involved with immigration law on both sides, should I say, for many years now. How has immigration law changed since the events of 9/11?
I had the privilege, Jennifer, to serve as a special assistant United States attorney as a federal prosecutor for nearly 4 years, where I represented the Immigration Service and caused removals of individuals from the United States, and then went into private practice, a firm that my dad established in Manhattan, where we're 50 people and all we practice is U.S. immigration law. And we've seen extraordinary changes. Many of us advocated for changes years ago when we saw that we were vulnerable. We saw that there were students, diplomats, clerics that were on U.S. soil that didn't really have the right to be on U.S. soil, but ultimately were conducting all sorts of insidious conduct.
Now, what type of flaws were you seeing in the system at that time?
Well, in those days, we saw the Immigration Service turning a cheek on people that were to be removed and they couldn't find them. We saw people that had committed all sorts of criminal acts. This is a very common sense issue. These people should not be on U.S. soil and they should have acted beforehand. Generally, people qualify for status in the United States either by a relationship to somebody or an offer of a job petition. And you have to maintain your status that is lawfully at all times. If you go from a temporary visa to a green card and ultimately to becoming a citizen, you have to make sure that you are not vulnerable. On September 11th, we saw how vulnerable we were because the government or our intelligence services really did not protect our interests. And following September 11th, we see the government that is scrambling now to protect us. And the challenge that they face right now is to discern how to put resources. Are we going to push out those good people that built our country? Again, we are a very democratic society built on the backs of immigrants, and we pride ourselves in fighting for those liberties, versus making sure that we have a seamless web, that people will not conduct activity against us and have gotten here or bootstrapped themselves in lawful ways that Congress and our founding fathers would never have contemplated.
Now, when you were a prosecutor, you were deporting people, but now you're working to keep people here in the country. You worked on several cases since 9/11, including one New Jersey woman, Dina Gilby. Dina's
husband perished in the World Trade Center attack. In fact, Jennifer, I had a score of people come to my home following the attacks because they didn't feel comfortable coming into Manhattan. And a lot of them were low profile and some of them were high profile. Dina Gilby was one of the more high profile ones. Both senators from the state of New Jersey, U.S. senators, called upon me, and we represented her without a fee to make sure that she could remain here. After all, her husband had paid for her citizenship by helping remove all of his colleagues safely from the World Trade Center, only to perish. And the government denied all sorts of cases, and ultimately she was potentially put into peril. Now we represent another gentleman by the name of Vasily Ryzhov. Vasily's wife passed away in the World Trade Center attack. They were literally on the telephone together at the time when the plane came into her building. She thought that she would be okay and was told to remain where she was. It was the second tower to be hit. And right now Vasily is facing potential removal from the United States. His wife had won the lottery visa application, and unfortunately the government, rather than realizing the position that he was in, did not treat this as a special case and made overtures to remove him. We see the effect that sometimes immigration law has on families, because the law can contemplate separating parents from children. I've represented cancer survivors and other people where, God forbid, the parent dies of cancer and the other spouse does something untoward, not criminal, but untoward immigration-wise. The children could potentially be left behind. And that's something that needs to be recalibrated.
Michael, we're going to talk more about this after we just take a quick commercial break, so stay tuned for more Take 10.